Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Boardmen Don't Get Paid podcast. I'm your host, Dhruv, joined by my co-host, Lawrence.
What's up, everyone?
And we are here today to discuss a recap for Week 3 NFL DFS, as well as our picks for cash and GPP for Week 4. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. How did you do for Week 3, Lawrence? What were your lineups looking like?
Yeah, week 3 was another boom for us. That's 3 weeks in a row that I've cashed in all my double ups and 50-50s. And we had a good GPP week this week as well. So I'm pretty satisfied with how we did. Some of our plays kind of went off and really helped my lineups out. What about you, Dhruv?
Absolutely. Week 3 was actually my best week so far. So I am very happy with how Week 3 went. I just hope I can sustain that same level of production going forward, but promising for sure.
Yeah, so I'm excited to dive right into our recap. So let me just pull up my cash lineup here real fast. And so here it is. You see this at the corner of your screen. So yeah, I was kind of fumbling around with two different cash lineup constructions as the week progressed. And I didn't really, not until Sunday did I have my cash lineup set, which basically kind of the whole Rashad Penny being out news kind of turned me on to Chris Carson. And I thought Chris Carson was a great play. But as you can see, like he didn't do anything after that fumble. He was he was just benched for the rest of the game.
He fumbled the bag.
He did.
It's like he fumbled his carries.
There you go. But I still think Chris Carson was a great play. Like you would project for him to basically get the bulk of the carries, like 80 if not 90% of the Seahawks carries in a really good matchup against the Orleans. At his price, I thought he was a locked-in cash play. And because of the Chris Carson news or the Rashad Penny news that forced me onto Chris Carson, I was able to pay down at one of Ezekiel Elliott to play Carson, and that allowed me to pay up for Keenan Allen. So that kind of ended up helping me at the end anyway, right?
Yeah. Keenan Allen and Mike Evans were the plays of the week. So
exactly. And at my quarterback, I played Kyle Allen. I was really debating who I wanted to play a lot. For the most part, I had Jameis Winston there, but I think I figured I could totally pay all the way down to fit in Kyle Allen at my QB spot. At 4,000 in a really good matchup, I thought he would have been a great cash play, and he ended up producing. As for the high-priced running back that I wanted to fit in, I actually had two at the beginning of the week, which was both Ezekiel Elliott and Christian McCaffrey. But the Chris Carson news put me on McCaffrey because I like McCaffrey's matchup a lot more. And I was able to get him kind of stacked with Kyle Allen because, McCaffrey gets a lot of receptions anyways.
Right.
And I thought it would make sense to put McCaffrey with Allen in a great matchup against Arizona. I thought they were gonna score a lot lot and McCaffrey ended up, hitting value for me.
Absolutely.
My wide receiver play, I wasn't getting off of Nelson Aguilar or Larry Fitzgerald in my cash games. I thought they both had huge floors and really good matchups. Aguilar especially, he was going to get all the targets. And, he lucked into a couple of touchdowns. I'm not going to complain about that. At only 3,600 or whatever Aguilar was, I thought that was you basically had to play him in cash. Another one that I thought was close to a must-play was Zach Ertz. I know a lot of people were kind of debating back and forth on who they want to play as their cash tight end. But I thought Zach Ertz had the most target upside. I thought he was, with all the injuries that Philadelphia had, and was watching the game and he was getting double teamed a lot. So that was unfortunate. But you can't really predict double teams. Like Detroit basically told their team, hey, let's just let anybody but Zach Ertz beat us. And, well, seemed like that plan worked out because they won the game, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then for my flex spot, Austin Eckler is still $2,000 too cheap. And I feel like this week they finally priced him up high enough. And I still don't think he's high enough because he's playing against the Dolphins. But we'll get to that in a few. I think Eckler has one of the safest floors with all his PPR upside. And then my defense, I just plugged in whichever defense with my team and managed to score 175.9, which is usually a pretty good week in cash. And I managed to cash every double up and 50-50. So pretty happy about that.
Well done.
Yeah, let's see. Let's hear you talk a little bit about your cash construction, how you.
Yeah, so I I actually played cash this week. Usually I just do our DFS private like family friends league cash tourney. Well, it's not
Family
private,
friends,
it's like a
family league. We have family in there.
you're family to me.
There we go.
But yeah, so that's our own like side thing that we got going on. So I don't usually play cash. I just usually play GPP, but I decided to this week, and the lineup that I came up with had Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. Um, I thought that the game was going to be a shootout. It wasn't the type of shootout that I anticipated, but he still like hit value, and he had a couple long touchdowns and did Patrick Mahomes things. So I can't complain with that. For running back, I took Zeke and Dalvin Cook. I thought the floor was going to be way too high for Zeke. He kind of disappointed actually, but he didn't hurt you, right? So I mean, if you played Zeke in cash, you're not like killed by that. And considering how common of a play he was, if he did go off and you didn't roster him, you'd probably be in the red. So I thought he was a must-own player. Dalvin Cook was someone that I was actually not on early in the week, but as time went on, I started to kind of change my mind about him a little bit. And I thought that the volume of work was too high to pass on for cash, at least. And that worked out. I also followed what you did with Nelson Aguilar. I think he was, like Tyrell Williams the previous week where his price was too cheap. Nelson Aguilar was too cheap this week because those Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey injuries were not priced in. So he was severely mispriced. I think he was must own in cash, and he, got 6 times value. So that was a necessary play, I feel. For tight end, I took Greg Olsen. I feel like the Cardinals at this point are just like, you don't even really have to think about it. Like if there's a tight end playing the Cardinals, just plug them in. 3 weeks in a row, they've been absolutely crushed by tight ends, and Greg Olsen continued that trend. And then at my flex spot, I had Frank Gore. This is a guy that I was on throughout the week. He definitely hit the value that you would want at the price. I thought he had a high floor going in, considering that Devin Singletary was going to be out of the game. I didn't expect this game to be close. I thought it was going to be a blowout, and I assumed that he was going to get a little bit more work. TJ Yeldon actually got more work than I anticipated, but kind of got bailed out by a touchdown at the end of the game, but I'll take it. And I, too, took Larry Fitzgerald like you. I thought the matchup and the volume were too high for him to, be passed on at 5K, or it was a 5.1K. He week to week, he's consistently getting a lot of targets in that offense, and I think he still may be mispriced for next week as well. He's still kind of underpriced. And then Sterling Shepard was someone that I kind of shifted to like on Saturday. I thought that he was going to get a lot of targets. I feel like him and Evan Ingram are basically going to be getting every target there is until Golden Tate comes back. And his price was fairly low last week. So that was not, that probably wasn't necessarily a cash play, but that was that was just me projecting where the targets would go, and worked out in my favor. And then lastly, the Patriots defense, that was kind of just like a set it and forget it, against the Jets. Easy call, I think.
Yeah, so I'm just still very surprised you managed to land on Sterling Shepard with of all the cash game plays. Like 1% owned, that's a good find.
Yeah, I think he actually fit. He was probably like the second or the last person that I put in, and I looked at the price range of the receivers around him, and I just thought that he was going to get more targets than anyone else in that price range. And I feel like when a rookie QB comes into or a new QB comes into the equation, sometimes it's hard to value what those receivers are going to be. Like we saw that with Kyle Allen last week. All those Carolina receivers, it was hard to determine what their value would be, but you look at how Cam performed, it was kind of a situation where it could only go up. And I think the same thing sort of applied to Eli, where Daniel Jones was going to, infuse new life into this offense, and Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram, I thought were going to be the beneficiaries. I didn't think that Saquon Barkley would get hurt. Obviously, that played a factor into why Sterling Shepard succeeded so much, but that's kind of why I was put on him.
Nice. And just so all of you guys know out there, Drew's 199 points was the highest scoring cash game team in our league this week, right?
That I don't know who has the highest score, but
I think you. I mean, don't we have like bounty? If you have the highest score, you get paid out per week. Isn't that how it works?
I didn't get paid out, so maybe it wasn't me.
Oh, was it not you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I need to ask Lake to put the scores up to see, because it doesn't show the point totals, right? It just shows the win-loss record.
Yeah.
So the boardmen get paid, crew, in this 12.
We don't get paid. We don't get paid.
Yeah, we don't get paid. The 12-person Draftkings like private league that we're in, we're the only 3 undefeated people in the league, and this week, me and Lawrence actually go head-to-head.
Good luck. All right, moving on to GPP here at the side of our screen. I scored 215 for my best lineup, and I thought that was a pretty solid week. That could have been even better if I had just listened to myself for a couple of my early first look kind of picks. But I knew that I wanted to have parts of this Carolina-Arizona game. I thought it was going to shoot out. And so that's why I have Kyler Murray at my QB stacked with David Johnson, who I want to get off of the chalkier Kirk and Fitzgerald plays and play the pivot to them. And someone who also has correlation with Kyler Murray, because Johnson gets a lot of receiving yards anyway. So I played Murray with David Johnson, and then I ran it back with Greg Olsen, who I was not really on. He was someone I was really on at the beginning of the week, and then as his ownership started kind of drying up near the end of the week, I thought he was going to be a great GPP play, because beginning of the week he was like the highest, projected to be the highest owned tight end, and then just people started slowly getting onto Ingram, started going on to Kelsey, Mark Andrews, Zach Ertz. And so Greg Olsen's ownership, I thought, was kind of drying up a little bit. So I want to play Greg Olsen as my tight end in a great matchup to run it back with Kyler Murray and David Johnson. I wanted to play Keenan Allen because, it's Keenan Allen at a price. And I thought I was going to be able to differentiate from most people by paying up for my 2 wide receivers, paying up for Keenan Allen and Julio Jones. And I got them both at very cheap prices, right? Julio Jones at 10%, Keenan Allen at only 13%, and they both went off. And I thought both were in great matchups. Indy is a bend but not break kind of defense, so they don't really allow over-the-top balls. So I don't think Calvin Ridley was a play at all. But Julio Jones is really good at those underneath passes, and I thought Julio Jones was going to get a huge target share. And Keenan Allen, you just play him until, I don't know, you just keep. When do you stop playing Keenan Allen at this point?
You might have to play him all year. I don't know. He's maybe when Melvin Gordon comes back. I have no idea. He's too hot right now to pass on.
And then I played Dalvin Cook, who was just a running back that fit into my lineup. I thought he was going to be a little bit chalky, but I thought he was good chalk playing against the Raiders at home as a huge favorite, and he ended up exceeding value again. When do we stop playing Dalvin Cook?
I'm not going to play him this week. I think he's in a really bad matchup
against the Bears.
Yeah. But that may be a spot where you can get him at low ownership too.
Yeah. So. And then next up, my flex spot. So this play is interesting. I thought that the James White news affected a lot more like the dynamic of the slate than it should have. Like James White being out meant that Rex Burkhead was going to get the James White touches. Right. And especially against the Jets, who are a very stingy run defense. Like they're good against teams that just like running the ball up the middle. But like James White and Rex Burkhead, they don't get the ball up the middle. They get split out wide. And I think this play kind of got even better as the game progressed because of the Julian Edelman injury. I think Burkhead was already a great play. And then the second half when Edelman got injured just kind of helped the play along. And he was basically my Frank Gore pivot, like 3,900 for Rex Burkhead. And I got him at 7% ownership. I thought he was a great GPP play. And then my last play, I mean, well, first I played the 49ers defense. I just figured Niners defense, contrarian going up against a rookie quarterback. They've been turning the ball over a lot, and they still got their turnovers this game.
That was such a
So
sloppy game, by the
it
way.
wasn't, yeah, it wasn't really that good of a
Especially the
game.
Niners offense. My goodness. They had like 5 turnovers in their own on the Steelers half of the field.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Ugly. I think you skipped over the play that I wanted to ask you about, which is Marquez Valdez Scantling.
Yeah,
What
so
put
that's
you
the
on him?
game. Yeah, so I knew that Chris Harris this year has been going a little bit. He's been moving around. He's not necessarily just playing the slot anymore. He's not a slot corner anymore. Fangio's got him moving around to guarding perimeter, guarding shadow, like their number one receivers. And I figured Devontae Adams was going to be shadowed by Chris Harris. And like Devontae Adams is a pretty foolproof, like matchup proof kind of guy.
Yeah.
But I think Aaron Rodgers has had a proclivity of throwing it to MVS for the big plays, and I think Denver, outside of Chris Harris, was very susceptible to giving up big plays. And like this play, I thought could have been even bigger. They built up a lead, and all they did was just run out the game with Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones and a really good defense. But I thought if it was a little bit closer, MVS could have had an even bigger game. But the whole thing about him was I thought that he was going to be low owned, which I was right about. I thought he was going to be a great pivot off of those mid priced, chalky wide receivers like Kirk and Fitzgerald. I think he was even cheaper than that. Kirk, Fitzgerald, Aguilar. I didn't really want to play Aguilar in GPPs this week because of I thought his ownership was going to be too high.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to look for ways to pivot off of Aguilar. And for me, playing two expensive wide receivers along with a pivot in MVS was going to give me a unique lineup this week. And I just liked MVS. I like his big playability. I liked that he was going to take on the weakest Denver cornerbacks. Yeah, I thought everything kind of stood out for MVS. And I thought he was a buy low opportunity because last week Geronimo Allison went off, and I don't think people really knew that MVS is really their number 2 wide receiver. I think they saw the outlier week from Geronimo Allison saying that, oh, maybe he's back on top as a slot number 2 guy for Aaron Rodgers. But based on targets and snap percentage, it's been MVS this whole time.
Yeah, that was a fantastic call.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about your GPP lineup.
Yeah, so for my GPP, I fortunately had the 2 highest scorers of the week in the same lineup. So I had Mike Evans and Keenan Allen. And I stacked Mike Evans with Jameis Winston. So I think those 3 guys alone.
What a play! What plays right there? Evans, Allen, and Winston. Man.
Yeah. I mean, I was sort of on Jameis Winston, but after hearing you talk about him a little bit on the preview podcast, it kind of convinced me even more.
Yeah.
You also mentioned Mike Evans. And I thought that was a great time to get Mike Evans into your lineup because he's probably never going to be cheaper than that, and he's likely not going to play a defense worse than this one from the passing standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Keenan Allen was somebody that I was pretty much all in on, so that is why my week was so successful. I was on him from the get-go, and 15% ownership is kind of sizable in GPP, but it's still like enough where you can get a pretty heavy advantage on the field. And then Marvin Jones, I coveted because Philadelphia's secondary has been pretty much abysmal. Kenny Golladay actually had a really bad day, but fortunately Marvin Jones had a great day. And I think you can attack that Philadelphia secondary until further notice. Receivers have been going off against them all season. And the Zeke play, I kind of wish I didn't play Zeke, but again, I looked at him kind of like as a necessary player because had he gone for like 40 points at like 35 to 40% ownership, I didn't want to be on the outside looking in on that. So that was my reasoning for taking Zeke. OJ Howard left a little bit more to be desired.
As he has all year.
But he did a little bit better this week than he has in the past few weeks. I thought that he would have gotten a little bit more from Jameis, but I'm not going to complain with 9.6 points. Obviously, had I combined some of my cash plays into this lineup, it could have turned out a little better if I plugged in Greg Olsen here. But I thought with the correlation with Jameis, OJ Howard made sense. I'm not mad at that result. And Cowboys defense, again, that was kind of a set it and forget it. Stack with Zeke. Anytime your defense gets you double-digit points, I don't think you can complain. And then my last two plays were Devontae Freeman and Miles Sanders. I thought that Devontae Freeman was in a really good spot this week. He wasn't really being talked about a whole lot. Price was pretty low. People that play season long have noticed that he hasn't really produced to his standards. So I thought that all that combined would have led for a potentially great week. And obviously he fell a little bit short of that, but he didn't hurt me. So I'm not mad at the thought process behind the play. Obviously the result was not what I wanted. And then Miles Sanders was someone that I thought was going to produce a little bit more, but I'm not complaining with 13.6 at I think it was 3,900. So he got me 3x. Left a little bit more to be desired, but I thought he produced fairly well. And I plugged him in because the Eagles were so depleted from the wide receiver position. I thought that Miles Sanders was going to get a couple dump offs and get some PPR points. But it didn't work out the way I wanted. But
I was on Miles Sanders too. I thought that was a great buy low place for him as well. And I thought, it's a GPP. You're trying to differentiate yourself, and yeah, there's no problem with that play. Marvin Jones, amazing play. This is just a really well constructed team. So
thank you.
I like where your head was with this, stacking Elliott with the Cowboys D and then Winston with two of his pass catchers. And then the whole being contrarian, going with Jones and Sanders, I think that worked out really well.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, a little bit more left to be desired because how much I was also on Greg Olsen in my cheaper lineups, but I'm not going to complain with anytime I cash. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah. So moving on to our preview for this week, since we only have two of us here today, we won't be talking about 20 quarterbacks in our preview this week, which I would just like to point out that you guys had all 32 quarterbacks at your option, and the one guy that I touted had the highest score of the week.
You definitely did. You definitely did. Russell Wilson. And I don't know if you're trying to segue into him, but he seems like a pretty good option this week.
I think Russell Wilson is a great play again this week. I think I think in cash, you either lock in Daniel Jones or you lock in Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think Mahomes is always a possibility in cash. You can never go wrong playing Mahomes in cash. But if you want the savings, Russell Wilson's only at 6,100 versus an Arizona team that's just been giving up points left and right to fantasy players.
Yeah.
And Daniel Jones at 5,300. You saw his upside. He had a 40-point upside last week. So against Washington, you saw Trubisky just carve him up.
He looked like an NFL quarterback.
There you go. So I think those are the cash game plays. Any other ones you want to add, or?
I think those are the cash game plays. I think maybe one more that you could possibly throw in there. I think Jacoby Brissett is in a good spot against my trash Raiders. I think he's both GPP and cash viable.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. You like Jacoby Brissett at $100 more than Daniel Jones?
I would probably take Daniel Jones. I'm just saying if you want to add another quarterback into your pool, I think Jacoby's in a good high floor spot against the Raiders.
Okay. I think that's fair. Moving on to running backs for cash game builds this week. I think there's one expensive running back that you can plug in. I think the other ones are in tough spots, or are they even on the slate? I know Kamara's not on the slate. Zeke's not on the slate. Cook's in a difficult spot.
Yeah.
And there's no Saquon. So you're left with one high-priced running back for your cash game builds, and it's Christian McCaffrey
or against Houston.
Yeah, I think they're both plays, but Austin Eckler's price is definitely getting up there.
Yeah,
I think so. Here's the thing with Eckler. I think he's definitely still a viable play at 8,000. But I think I definitely want McCaffrey at 800 more, knowing that he's going to get the bulk of the running back touches and the receiving targets.
right.
Whereas Eckler, I can only project him to get the touches. I don't know. I mean, especially like last game against Houston, I felt like he was in a good game script, but it seemed like they were just using Justin Jackson a lot more than he
Yeah.
was. And at
Justin
8,000,
Jackson might actually be a GPP option this week.
we'll get to Justin
Yeah,
Jackson. So I think right now I want McCaffrey as a for sure cash play,
makes
and
sense.
then Eckler I'm still on the fence about. I don't really know what I want to do there. Uh, and then I think David Johnson is in a great spot at still a very cheap price. Like you can project him for the same amount of touches as Eckler in a matchup where Seattle just got carved up by Alvin Kamara, right? I think David Johnson has a very similar skill set to Kamara, and possibly project for more touches. And I think at only 6,800, I think that's a very safe price
Right.
for David Johnson. And then there's one other guy that I feel like I need to mention who seems like he's shaping up to be a cash game play that I don't really know if I want to go there yet, but it's Wayne Gallman at 4,600. Obviously, like he's going to be pretty chalky, and he has. I don't know. Like I think a lot of people are going to be on him, and
Mhm.
it's one of those things where if you play cash games, you don't want to be not on a guy that everybody else is on, especially with
Right.
the upside that he has at his cheap price. But it's still kind of early in the week, so I don't know if
I'm
I
gonna
want to go
pass on.
there yet.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
pass. I'm gonna. My thinking with Wayne Gallman is prove me wrong. You know, if it costs me, so be it. But I'm not gonna take Wayne Gallman.
So if you're not taking Wayne Gallman, where are you going to go at with your savings for cash game plays?
Well, I for running back,
Yeah.
I think you took. I mean, two of the options I was definitely looking at. Um, I see a couple of players who I feel are both GPP and cash viable. And the first one is probably going to be a little controversial. I think Leonard Fournette is actually in a good spot this week. The overall volume of work he's getting and the amount of work he's getting in the passing game, I think sets up for him to have a high floor. And I think the Broncos' run defense has been not as good as one would think. So I think there's potential for Fournette to actually do pretty well this week. The other one that I would say is on Johnson. We just saw what Mark Ingram did to the Chiefs. I think on Johnson at 5,400, the increase in volume that he's received since C.J. Anderson was cut by the team, he's in a really good high floor spot as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with those. I don't know if I'm going to be playing them in cash games yet.
Yeah,
Uh, but I definitely agree that those two are very good plays, and they will most likely end up in my TPP lineup somewhere.
right.
Moving on, let's talk about some wide receivers for cash game. I think there's one that we can both agree on that at only 7,600 should be a lock and load in a cash game.
Yeah, Keenan Allen, you take until I don't know, until he's like 10,000 at this point.
Yeah, I mean the other option is you could pivot off Keenan Allen and pay 100 more for someone like DeAndre Hopkins, but I feel like Allen's floor is just so high right now. And like, yeah, you can say like even they're playing against Miami. What if they just sit him? Well, like after three quarters, if the Chargers have like 35 points, I'm sure Keenan Allen has a couple of touchdowns and maybe 100 yards or something like that. So you still play Keenan Allen, I think, in cash games. I think you find a way to fit him into your lineup.
Yeah,
Um,
he's too good right now to pass.
I think another cash game play for me this week is going to be Scary Terry McLaurin. That's a terrible nickname. Every time I
I
think of Scary
I
Terry,
I think McLaurin F1 is what the public has decided on.
Yeah, I think McLaurin is a great play. That guy
Yeah.
has just been the number one option for Case Keenum.
I
He
agree
gets
with
all
that.
the targets. He's playing against the Giants, and you just saw the Bucks' number one option just tear him up for 48 fantasy points.
He's in a really good spot. I would add to that Tyler Lockett. And if you're taking Russell Wilson, I think that just makes all the sense in the world. He's in a great spot to do what everyone else is doing to that Cardinal secondary.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Cardinals, I think both Cardinals, again, are in a great spot. I personally like Christian Kirk a little bit more than Fitzgerald this week because of pricing. Kirk's price was unchanged, even though he arguably had a better week than Fitzgerald last week.
And he's getting a ton of opportunity. Eventually, that's going to turn into a touchdown. And I think this may be the week that happens. So I agree with that as well.
Yeah, so I think we've covered a bunch of plays from all different price points for cash games or wide receivers. So I think we can move on to – so the reason we don't want to talk too much about how much like our cash game plays because we're actually playing against each other in that Draftkings league, and we don't really want to reveal too much of our hand.
But at this point, I think we already know what
it's gonna come down. Like it's gonna come down to some kind of 2v2 or 3v3 anyway. So where we differentiate, that's going to be, where. Yeah, exactly. So at tight end, I think that there's only two possible cash tight end options this week. What are your thoughts on tight end?
Can I guess what your two options are?
Yeah, go for it.
Evan Ingram.
That is one of them.
And Will Dissly.
You got them both.
Yeah, so I think, again, I kind of alluded to this earlier. Cardinals, right now, you just play whatever tight end is matching up against them.
Yeah.
And Evan Ingram seems to have chemistry with Daniel Jones already. His price is still very fair, and he has a ton of potential. He's a game-breaking type of player, and wouldn't be surprised if he surpasses 20 points again.
Yeah, I think we can move on. We'll save our other tight ends for GPP talks. But yeah, Evan Ingram, I think, has such a high floor, especially with Daniel Jones, and his price is still really affordable. Will Dissly, like you think that, we're just going to randomly plug in tight ends against Arizona, but Will Dissly's gotten a lot of Russell Wilson targets.
Yeah.
He's been like their number 3rd highest target share guy.
Yeah. Particularly in the last 2 weeks, and they just traded away another tight end, which goes to show the confidence that they have in him.
And they get to play against Arizona. So
it's a lot of good things going in Will Dissly's direction.
Yeah, and defense. I got one defense.
I think you can just plug the Chargers in there and, just let it go.
There we go. I think that's a great cash defense. If you really need the savings, I think the Broncos are in a decent spot against Minshew. At only 2,900
against the Minch Goat. Are you sure?
Yeah, I think they're a little bit overrated right now, and I think the Denver defense has definitely been underperforming. But at only 2,900, I think there's enough upside there because like Minshew takes a lot of shots like downfield, and you could there are chances. That's a lot of those downfield shots means a lot of chances for interceptions and sacks, and 2,900. If you need the savings, you can play the Broncos defense. I might be just sticking with playing the Chargers defense because it's the flowchart defense, right? Like whichever defense is playing against the Dolphins, you just plug in and play.
Whatever defense is playing against the Dolphins, whatever tight end is playing against the Cardinals.
Although I must say they did look somewhat competent last week with Josh Rosen at QB.
Yeah, they did, but we'll see. I don't know if they will against Bosa and Melvin Ingram.
Yeah, it's just too much upside for the Chargers defense to skip them.
Yeah.
As for us, let's skip to our GPP plays. So now we can get a little bit more interesting. Like, what are you looking for when it comes to QBs and GPPs this week?
I think you can look at Matthew Stafford. I believe.
Have you recommended Stafford every week, basically?
I probably have, and I'm not mad at it. Like, he's had a good season so far. And last week he kind of got, screwed over a little bit by some TJ Hawkinson drops in the end zone. Could have had an even bigger day. But I think Matthew Stafford is someone that you can go to. I think Given all the value on the board, I don't think Patrick Mahomes is going to be heavily owned this week because of Russell Wilson, because of um, because of Daniel Jones. I believe the majority of the ownership will lie there, and that sets up for a contrarian Patrick Mahomes week, and I feel like that's always the best week to take him. So I think Patrick Mahomes is a great GPP play this week.
Yeah, I think that's a great pick. I have two guys who I think are going to be great GPP plays this week. First off, I think Lamar Jackson against Cleveland is going to be a great pick. I feel like his ownership has kind of plummeted a little bit because his price is so high.
Mm-hmm.
But he's shown this year that he has just as much upside as anybody, even including like Patrick Mahomes in the QB spot. And at only 6,900 at low ownership, playing against Cleveland, who I don't know, they just don't look good this year at all.
You're not worried about their pass rush at all, or?
I think the pass rush is what likes me, like what gets me onto Lamar Jackson even more, because pass rush means that Lamar Jackson gets to improvise, and we know how good he is when it comes to improvising. And I think that kind of adds more rushing yards to his total.
I think another thing too that kind of skewed the way the Browns defense looked last week was they were down like two of their starting cornerbacks.
Yeah.
And I feel like those guys are back this week, so I think that does play a little bit of a role there. But hey, if you take Lamar Jackson, he's definitely going to be low ownership, so I'm not complaining at all from that perspective.
And I think the Ravens
contrarian pick for sure.
Yeah, and the Ravens also have like the second or the the fourth highest implied team total this week. So Vegas thinks they're going to score some points, and like they've not had any trouble this year. And I just don't think the Browns, like, I think you're pretty high on the Browns defense. I just don't think that they're good enough to, like, Jared Goff, like, he's a terrible quarterback. I keep saying he's a terrible quarterback, but I don't think he had that much trouble with. I mean, he had a bit of trouble at the beginning, but it just seemed like once he started focusing in on Cooper Kupp, he had no issues carving up that defense.
Again, I think I can't look at last week's game as a true representation, because if your two main players in the secondary are out, you're not going to perform as well.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, are they back for sure this week?
I need to see the injury report. I think that Denzel Ward will be in this week, but I need to see the injury report. This is Thursday, so I'm not sure where that lies. I think we'll get a better picture by Saturday.
Yeah. And the thing with even Ward doesn't cover. I mean, the thing with Ward too is just like, I think Marquise Brown just has such game-breaking speed that he can one big play and they're gone. Like it's.
I get it.
Yeah, so I like, that's why I like Lamar Jackson in GPPs because I like his low ownership and I like his matchup, and I also really like Kyler Murray again this week. I know that second half looked awful. Like, it just seemed like between him just getting sacked every play, it also seemed like he was just holding on for the ball way too long and just had no confidence at all. But I think going up against the Seahawks secondary, which has been really bad this year, I think Kyler Murray's in a great bounce back spot. And at only 6,000, his price hasn't gone up, and he's shown that he started using his legs last week.
Exactly. He was running a lot more last week.
I like the rushing upside that he has.
And the breakout Kyler game is coming. You definitely want to own him the week that it happens. It might be this week.
It is coming. And the only reason I want to mention this other guy too is because I'm planning on stacking a couple of wide receivers in this game, so I figured I might as well just mention him. But I think Deshaun Jackson against Carolina is in a really good spot. I think Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson against Carolina is in a great spot. I think let's just move on. I'll tell you why in a bit, but I think he's going to have low ownership.
Okay.
And at 6,400, like I want parts of that game. I think that game has the capability of shooting out, and I think having Deshaun Watson is a great way of getting exposure to that shootout.
Fair. I think we said we weren't going to do 32 quarterbacks, but we probably hit like 8, and I'm going to give you one more before we go on.
Okay.
I think one, if you want to go cheap this week, Case Keenum looks like he's in a good game script. against that terrible secondary that the Giants have.
The thing with quarterbacks, I think there's literally every quarterback is pretty much in play if you want to play them. I have no problem not like there's like okay, let's do this. There's like 3 quarterbacks that I'm probably not touching this week. And it's like Kirk Cousins, maybe Joe Flacco.
I'm not taking Josh Allen. That Patriots secondary is too ridiculous.
But the thing with quarterbacks when it comes to GPPs each week is like it's not the position where you win or lose your matchups. So that's why like if you like a quarterback, just play that quarterback. Like like last week, even though Russell Wilson was a high scoring quarterback, I don't think he was in the millionaire maker winning lineup.
But he could be this week.
He could be this week.
Yeah.
But yeah, quarterbacks just have low variance. And so it really doesn't matter week to week who you really want to plug in. So yeah, play whoever you want at QB. Yeah. Where it does matter though is running backs. Running backs matter in DFS, not in football, but in DFS.
Hey, they matter in football.
Do they?
Yeah, especially if they can catch passes like Christian McCaffrey and Kamara and can pass. There's value.
And is that why Melvin Gordon's coming back and taking all of Eckler's well-deserved touches?
Yeah, I mean, that situation just goes to show you that you can replace running backs for sure.
Yeah, so who do you like in for GPPs this week at running back?
I think I alluded to this earlier. I like Kerryon Johnson. I think he's in a good spot to be a potential pivot from all the passing game picks for that.
Agree with you there completely.
I also like Raider bias right here. I think Josh Jacobs is going to have a really nice week this week. John Gruden talked about wanting him to be involved in the pass game more. That's something that he was like projected to be good at, but the Raiders haven't really used him in that way. They also didn't give him a lot of touches last week. I think Josh Jacobs gets a ton of work this week, and at 5,100 and low ownership, I'm in on that. And then I think the other play, I'm kind of just going cash and GPP for my RBs this week. I think Leonard Fournette is a good GPP pick. Low ownership because of the recency bias, huge workload, and the Broncos' run defense is not as strong as their pass defense. So those would be my 3 picks at RB.
Yes, I like your picks a lot. I don't really know if I want to get onto Josh Jacobs, but I'm not going to fault you for that. I think he's definitely going to be a low own and could quite possibly be a good pick. Devontae Freeman showed a little bit signs of life last week against the Indy defense, and I think Josh Jacobs can do the same thing. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go pretty contrarian with my running back picks this week. First off, I really like Chris Thompson at only 4,500. I was actually going to say him
too. I like him a lot.
I think at only 4,500, he's shown that when the Redskins play him over AP, they seem like they move the offense a lot better. It moves a lot more.
He should just start.
He should just start, but I think they're worried about his touch potential because he's so small.
Yeah.
But against the Giants in the game that I'm projecting to shoot out, like I think Chris Thompson will fit in a lot better in the flow of the game than AP. And at only 4,500, he's shown a floor of 10 this year, and I think 10 is the minimum you're going to see from him. I think he gets to at least maybe 14, 15.
Yeah.
It's totally, and I don't think he's even scored yet this year. So wait until he scores and see his. This might be the week. Another guy that I like a lot, I've been on this whole year just because he never gets talked about, is Marlon Mack against Oakland.
Yeah.
Marlon Mack is basically the bell cow that no one's been talking about. He's getting he's getting all the running back touches and running a lot of routes too. Like, Nyheim Hines might be the third round back or the third down back in theory, but Mack is still running a lot of routes. And one of these days, Brissett's going to start checking down and throwing to Mack and getting his receiving touches up. And at only 6,000 against the Oakland defense, like they've been a sieve to running backs this year.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely considering Marlon Mack at 6,100.
Nice.
And then I think that's enough about my running back plays. I guess we'll both kind of briefly touch on Justin Jackson a little bit. Justin Jackson, we saw what Tony Pollard did in mop-up time against Miami last week. Got 12 carries, 100 yards, and still scored a touchdown at his price. He exceeded value, but nobody was on Tony Pollard last week, and for good reason. I think this Justin Jackson game this play might be a little bit thin, but he can't deny that there's upside there, especially with how the Chargers used Justin Jackson in the second half of last week's game against the Texans.
Yeah. He could get that Tony Pollard game that we saw last week. So
yeah,
possibility.
Yeah, so I think those are the running backs that are going to be on. Anybody else you want to add, or you think the 3 each is good enough?
I think that is solid for running back. The last one I was going to say was Chris Thompson, but you already alluded to that.
So this week, I think normally, you can, like I said last week, if you find a high price running back that's going to be popular, like last week it was Zeke. You could easily find pivots off of them, right? Like I mentioned, you could have I was gonna play a couple of Kamaras and a couple of Saquon because they're gonna be low owned pivots off of the same price that Zeke was,
right.
And all my Kamara lineups did really well. All my Saquon lineups, obviously he got injured. You can't really predict for that.
That's you can't.
But that's just bad luck. I stacked basically the Giants and Bucks game with Saquon as my running back, But this week, I think it's a little bit more difficult because you don't really have that high price pivot off of CMC. So I think CMC's ownership is going to be off the charts this week. You can't pivot to Kamara, you can't pivot to Zeke. There's no Saquon to pivot to. Yeah. At 8,800, it just seems like you just play CMC, unless you want to be really creative. But I think they're in a great matchup against Houston. What do you think about running back strategy for this week in GPPs?
I mean, I like some of these 5 to 6K priced players. I think that's probably where I'm going to go this week. Okay. That allows me to pay up for Keenan Allen and, give me a little bit more flexibility.
Okay. I feel you. Moving on to wide receivers. Who do you have as your wide receiver GPP picks this week?
So I think Keenan Allen, we've already talked him up a lot in this podcast. I think you keep playing him. Doesn't matter how chalky he is. He's too good to pass up right now. I think Tyler Lockett, we talked about him a little bit earlier too. He's in a great spot to go off this week. Looking for another option. I'm kind of scrolling through here. Let's see. Curtis Samuel at 4,600 is a good value in my opinion. I think Kyle Allen was targeting him frequently. I think he looks like he has more rapport with Samuel than DJ Moore. And I think at 4,600, Curtis Samuel is in a great spot to far exceed value. And this might be the week that he goes over 100 yards. So that's my third receiver. You go ahead and tell your receivers. I'll look for a sleeper while you do that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of games that are on my radar this week that I really like. I think that Washington-New York Giants game. So I've already mentioned Terry McLaurin, but I also think that Trey Quinn at min price, stone cold min price, 3,000 can be a great way of differentiating from the Terry McLaurin chalk. And I think the other guy, Paul Richardson, looked good too last week. Only 3,700. I think any of these Washington wide receivers you can fit into your GPP lineup as a great way of kind of differentiating and also freeing up salary cap for other players. Another guy that I really liked this week, I alluded to earlier, was from the Houston-Carolina game, and I think it's Will Fuller. I think it's a game where at only 4,500, Will Fuller's getting his route. He's getting his routes. He's getting his targets, and we're still waiting on that Will Fuller breakout 140 yards, 2 touchdown type game where he just goes over the top of defenses. And I think Carolina has Dante Jackson, who's a great cornerback, who might be following Nuke around. Obviously DeAndre Hopkins, there's no he's matchup proof, but I feel like Jackson can make life a little bit tough on him, and Fuller has the speed to burn that Carolina defense. And I think in a game that shoots out, I think Deshaun Watson is going to look for a number one target or number one deep threat in Fuller. So at only 4,500, he has that upside.
And that's a great potential GPP play because, as we saw earlier on in the season, these deep threat wide receivers, when they have their day, they are slate breaking. So if he has one big catch, he's already hitting value for you.
Mm-hmm. And then my last wide receiver pick that I want to just talk about is a guy who always gets less than 10% ownership. I don't know why, but he's been the number one target in the Rams offense in Cooper Kupp. I think the reason why nobody ever wants to play Cooper Kupp is because they don't know who to play between Kupp, Cooks, and Woods. Right. But I think this year, Kupp's shown to be the number one target for Jared Goff, and playing at home is where you want to play Rams receivers. Kupp's had 32 targets already. In 3 games, he has 32 targets. That's a lot of targets. He's getting all the touchdown looks. Kupp's got a very high floor. I think his floor has been like 12 points this season. And at only 6,500, like you're looking at 25-point, 30-point upside with the amount of targets he gets against this really leaky Bucks secondary that just got torched by Daniel Jones last week. So I like Kupp as a low-owned contrarian wide receiver pick.
Nice.
And then obviously, I think all the really high-priced guys are in play. Like I don't know if I'm gonna go there. Like Keenan Allen's going to. You can play Keenan Allen GPPs. Like I'm never gonna knock you for that. He's gonna be a great high-priced play. But I think this is a week where I think OBJ, DeAndre Hopkins, and Julio Jones are all in decent matchups that you're gonna get at very low ownership. So those guys are pretty much the natural pivots off of Keenan Allen if you want to go there.
Are you going to pivot? Are you going to pick Keenan in GPP?
I don't know if I'm going to pick Keenan in GPP yet. I really like the pivots there. Like last week, there really weren't pivots off of Keenan, right? Like there was like OBJ wasn't on the slate. Nuke was in not a very good matchup and was a little overpriced. And then Julio Jones was a natural pivot off of Keenan Allen, and I just put both of them in my lineup. I think they're both, especially because there's no high-priced running backs besides CMC this week. Like if you paid down on running back, you might naturally get onto 2 of these high-priced wide receivers. So I think, I don't know, it's hard to say yet, but I think they're all in very good spots.
Okay. So I found my sleeper wide receiver.
All right, let's hear it.
And this is going to be dedicated to Yash Varma, who's not here with us today. I'm taking Preston Williams this week. I think he is in a solid matchup where they're going to be throwing the ball a ton, and Devontae Parker will be getting the worst matchup as far as the cornerback. I believe that Casey Hayward will be shadowing.
Devontae Parker's been so bad this year. Like actually, so bad this year that I don't think you don't need anybody to cover Devontae Parker. He's just gonna drop the ball naturally.
Yeah,
he'll be wide open and drop the ball.
He's been pretty awful, but Preston Williams' breakout game is finally here. It's gonna be against Yash's very own Chargers. And it's gonna be a bittersweet day for him because he's gonna be in the background cheering for Preston, knowing full well he's not a Charger. It's going to be a good test of where his allegiance is.
See, and the thing about this Preston Williams play that I really like is that he had 12 targets last week. Josh Rosen's got like hard eyes for Preston Williams.
Yeah, he does.
So, and he's got
you do too.
He's got a floor of 10.
Yeah.
And at 4K, like, why not play Preston Williams again?
Yeah, this could be the 20-pointer that we've been waiting for.
There you go.
Yeah.
Let's move on to our tight ends. So we've talked about 2 tight ends who are great in GPP and cash, which are Will Disley and Evan Ingram. I'm going to let you do the honors to choose your first GPP tight end because I'm pretty sure I know where you're going with this.
Do you?
Yeah.
I think this is a good week for TJ Hawkinson, actually.
That is not what I was expecting.
Oh, it's not what you're expecting. Okay. I think this is a good TJ Hawkinson week. He had a couple drop touchdowns last week. He was still being looked for. Recency bias will tell you that he is probably going to be less than 5% owned despite the price point. And at that price point, I think in a game where they're going to be throwing the ball a ton, he is in a very good spot to, potentially 4x or go, well past that point. So I really like TJ Hawkinson in GPP this week.
All right, well, I got one guy who I really like in GPP this week, and it's Darren Waller.
Is that where you thought I was going?
I thought you were going to go with Darren
The
Waller,
rate
but
of
I guess not.
bias?
Yeah, Darren Waller's in a great spot against Indy. Man, this guy had what, like 15 targets last week or something? Like
14
when
beast.
yeah, when they were down, it just seemed like Derek Carr only looked for him.
I can't blame him. This guy's a monster, and he hasn't even scored a touchdown yet. So he could have even a bigger game coming.
This dude just had 30 points without scoring a touchdown.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, and if last year's Derek Carr performance is any indication, and maybe what John Gruden's offense would indicate, they seem to like targeting tight ends. Jared Cook last year was a great play as a tight end, and he hasn't performed that way this year. And it looks like it's not because of his talent; it's probably because the way the offense is designed. It seems like the ball is getting checked down to that tight end pretty frequently. You know, captain check down Derek Carr. So wouldn't be surprised if that happens again this week.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we can move on, but like I want to just give an honorable mention to like Kelsey. You can always play Travis Kelsey in GPPs, and you can always get him at decent ownership. Like it's just his price. Like, do you want to play his price when play him at his price when other tight ends have shown that they have Travis Kelsey like upside this year?
Yeah, but you know, I think, like you said, though, he might be slept on because of what you just said. So, and he's going to have a 40-point week eventually. Maybe this is the one.
Maybe this is the one. Any other tight ends you want to mention, or is that our very limited GPP tight end pool this week?
I think I'm probably going to take Will Dissly in both. So it's really hard to pass on a tight end playing against the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Honestly. So it's probably going to be my more common play, but my other play will be TJ Hawkinson.
I think TJ Hawkinson's a great pivot, and I also think someone like OJ Howard, whose price is now reflecting his production, can also be a very solid buy low option against the Rams, who have shown that they're not that good against tight ends.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and then
yes,
quick couple seconds on defense. I'm gonna actually take the Carolina Panthers this week. I think their pass rush with Brian Burns has been pretty vicious, and we've seen how horrendous that Houston Texans O-line can be. And I think it makes for a decent punt play at 2,300. So I'm actually going to go with the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah, I love Houston this year. Like their offense is so good. Like their offense can easily put up like 30 points, whatever game, like each game, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is, like you can always play every defense against Houston too because they give up so many sacks.
Exactly. And they're so
and fumbles and yeah, like it's a thing where you can have a defense still score you like 8 points going up against Houston, and Houston itself will still score 30 points. So I think Carolina is a great play. Chargers are a great play. I think I might be going with the Rams here at a pivot. I like the Rams a lot against a very turnover prone Bucks team. Rams are really great at forcing turnovers and playing at home. I think, or I guess playing away, Winston's going to have some trouble against the Rams. And I think you can get them at pretty decently low ownership because people are just going to be wanting to pay up for the Chargers anyway.
Fair.
Yeah. Shall we move on to our spread picks for the week?
Let's do it. I think you should go first, though. I'm still kind of glancing at it.
Okay. Well, last week we went 2-1. I suffered my first loss on the year, but Dhruv improved to a 3-0 record, and Yush moved to 2-1 with his overpick. So really solid. We're 7-2 on the year. Hopefully we can continue that. I mean, I'm pretty happy we just keep going 2-1 every week.
Yeah,
that's a huge.
Take that every week. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a couple of games that I find pretty interesting in this week. I
have my pick if you want me to go.
I mean, I have my pick. It's just, do I trust it is my issue. And I think this is a good spot. Actually, let's have you go first. I want to think
Okay.
about my pick a little bit longer.
I am gonna go back to my old ways of being boring and square, and I am going to fire up the Patriots for the second time this season at +7 on the road against the Buffalo Bills. I think they are going to win by blowout, just
Yeah.
like they have the other three games. So I will take the Patriots +7 at the Bills this week.
So I'm glad you kind of mentioned that game because that was the game that I kind of really liked the Bills in. I think they definitely underperformed last week, and I think this has all the makings of a how do you say it, a trap game for the
Slugfest too.
Patriots. Yeah, but I do. I mean, I don't like betting against Belichick, and I'm definitely okay with that pick. I just it just feels like a game that I just don't want to touch because it feels very trappy.
I
Uh,
understand.
I'm gonna go with the Bears. I think that the Vikings they've looked a little bit. Um, what's the right for they've looked very good this year. But I also think they've looked very good this year because they haven't really played any tough competition. I think the
Besides the
Fal-
Packers,
uh,
consider them tough either.
I mean, I think that game was, yeah. I mean, I feel like that game was, uh, I don't know, like they didn't look good in that game against the Packers. Like they had trouble in all facets of the game. They couldn't, and I feel like the Bears are a much better defense than the Packers are. I know the Packers have improved this year, but I think it's very different. And I think the other thing that's different as well is they're traveling to Soldier Field, and Soldier Field is not an easy place to play,
Yeah,
especially against that defense that just made the Redskins look so incompetent. Um,
Khalil Mack.
and
I'm still
yeah,
sad about that.
yeah. I think they're in a good spot. I see them at -2 right now, and I like that number a lot. I feel like a lot of people are going to be on the Vikings because of how good they've looked this year and how bad the Bears have looked this year. But I
Yeah,
think the Bears are I think the Bears. I think last week was, or I guess Thursday night, Monday Night Football kind of showed that they do look decent if they're playing against if Mitch Trubisky can kind of look like a competent NFL quarterback. Like I think
big if.
they look decent if he can actually do stuff. I think the
Well, if the
first
Bears play ahead, that's when they're the most dangerous because that pass rush with Khalil Mack, you can put that up against any O line and you're going to produce.
And I think Cousins has been very prone to error, right? Like I think you'd think that he's just a guy who protects the ball, but man, Cousins have made some. He's made some pretty bad passes this year. He just hasn't looked good. I don't know if it's because of his confidence issue, where the Vikings just want to run the ball all the time now. Um, but yeah, I think the Bears are in a good spot at home at only -2. I feel like in any other situation they should be favored by a little bit more.
Fair.
Um, So I'm going to go with the Bears this week.
Sounds good to me. Anything
Yeah.
else you want to add?
Yeah. Good luck to everybody this week. Hopefully, we helped some people make money last week because I know it helped me make money.
Oh yeah, quick shout out to my cousin Cyrus, who's been following us uh, on the podcast, and he started DFSing 2 weeks ago, and 2 weeks in a row he has cashed and made a profit. So shout out to cousin Cyrus.
Shout out Cousin Cyrus.
Yeah,
Loving that Russell Wilson pick.
yeah, he made that pick because of your suggestion. So said
So
thanks.
let's hope I follow my own advice this week and play some of the players that I tout. Um, it's just a little disappointing because last week it just seemed like there are guys that I was on, and as the news kind of like kept
Yeah.
coming out, you kind of slowly pivoted off of them because you're like, oh, I don't really need this guy anymore.
Yeah. The
So
main one that we discussed like privately that you were definitely like hinting at was like, hey, like I think a good idea would be to take the running backs from this Chiefs Ravens game. You were definitely suggesting that like the day before, and I was thinking like, that's actually a good idea. Mark Ingram had an insane game. So you were
Yep.
probably, a little upset about that, I'm sure.
I was a little upset about a lot of things. Like, it could have been a huge week if I just went with my gut on a couple of things, but it just felt really hard to kind of get off of the guys that were just seemed like they were in smash spots. I'm looking at you, Chris Carson. Hopefully, nothing like Chris Carson happens to us this week.
Yeah, that was the fizzle of the week for all of us, but fortunately we made up for it with our other picks. So
I don't think we made up for it, but other people made up for us by also choosing Chris Carson.
this is true. This is true. Yeah.
Yeah, good luck to everybody this week. Hope you guys all cash. And we're looking forward to seeing you again next week.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
See ya.